They don't call. They don't text. They don't show up at your door. But at 2 a.m., when the world is completely silent and there is nothing left to distract them, they open your contact. They stare at your name. Their thumb hovers over the screen. And then they lock their phone and put it face down. And lie there in the dark, missing you, in complete silence. This is what an avoidant looks like when they love you. And most people never find this out. Because most people give up too soon or stay too long for the wrong reasons, without ever understanding what is actually happening inside the person who keeps pulling away. But you, after this video, will understand everything. And I promise you, what you're about to hear will completely rewire how you see them. Don't move. Dash. Welcome to this channel, where we go into the darkest, most unspoken corners of human psychology. Not to romanticize pain, not to give you false hope, but to give you the one thing that changes everything: clarity. Subscribe right now if you've ever loved someone who seemed emotionally unreachable, because everything on this channel was built for exactly that kind of person. Now, let's go somewhere most people are too afraid to look. Inside the mind of an avoidant, at night, when they miss you. Dash. Here is the first thing you need to understand. And this will shake something loose inside you if you really let it land. Avoidants are not cold people pretending to be warm. They are deeply feeling people, drowning in feeling, who learned at a very young age that their emotions were not safe to express. Think about that. Somewhere in their childhood, through a parent who dismissed their tears, or a home where vulnerability was punished, or a love that was given and then suddenly taken away, their developing brain made a decision. A survival decision. It said, feeling this much is dangerous. Needing people is dangerous. Getting close means getting destroyed. And so it built a wall. Not out of cruelty. Out of terror. That wall kept them safe as a child. But now, in the middle of a relationship with you, that same wall is destroying everything they actually want. And the most psychologically devastating part? They can see it happening, and they still can't stop it. Dash. So when night comes, when the armor gets heavy and the distractions finally run out, here is what actually happens. The first thing they do will make your chest ache. They check on you without letting you know they're there. They open your profile. Not your recent posts, your old ones. The ones from months ago. The ones from before things got complicated and distance got created. They scroll slowly. They stop on specific photos. Not because they're looking for something, but because looking at you, even digitally, even silently, even from behind a wall of their own creation, feels like the closest thing to being with you that their nervous system will currently allow. They don't like anything. They don't comment. They leave no trace. Because leaving a trace would mean admitting they were there. And admitting they were there would mean admitting they miss you. And admitting they miss, you would crack open the one thing they've spent their entire life keeping sealed shut. So they watch. Silently. From a distance they built themselves. Feeling the weight of every inch of that distance. And doing absolutely nothing to close it. This is not indifference. This is someone loving you in the only language their trauma currently allows. Dash. The second thing they do at night is something so psychologically revealing that most therapists spend years helping avoidants even recognize it in themselves. They let themselves feel you, in memory, in a way they couldn't when you were actually there. Read that again slowly. When you were present, when you were real and close and available, their nervous system fired alarm signals. Too close, too much, too real. Retreat. But in memory, you are safe. In memory, you cannot come closer than they're ready for. You cannot need something from them. You cannot trigger the part of their brain that screams danger whenever intimacy deepens. So at night, in the quiet, they let themselves remember you fully. Without the panic, without the walls, without the automatic retreat that happens in real time. They remember the exact sound of your laugh. The specific way you looked at them during one particular moment that they've never told anyone stayed with them. The thing you said that nobody else would have thought to say. The way your presence felt like something their body recognized before their mind could explain it. They hold these memories in the dark like something sacred. And the tragedy, the unbearable psychological tragedy, is that this version of you, the memory version, the safe version, gets more of their real, unguarded heart than the actual you ever did. Because you were too real. And real things can leave. Memories can't. The third thing, and this is where it gets deeply mysterious, they have entire conversations with you that you will never hear. Not out loud. In their head. They tell you things they've never said. They explain themselves in ways they couldn't when you were standing right in front of them. They say I'm sorry in 17 different ways. They say I miss you so simply, so cleanly, that it would have dissolved every argument you ever had. If only they could say it when it counted. Sometimes they start to reach out. A message gets typed. Sometimes a whole paragraph. Raw and honest, and more emotionally articulate than anything they've said to you out loud. Their finger sits over the send button. And then something happens in their nervous system. A wave of panic. A tightening. The ancient, automatic, deeply coded fear that says, if you send this, you lose control. If you lose control, you get hurt. If you get hurt, the message gets deleted. The conversation that could have changed everything disappears without a trace. And you wake up the next morning to silence, never knowing that someone spent half the night trying to find the courage to break it. The fourth thing avoidants do at night is the one that would surprise you most if you could see it. They question themselves with a ferocity that nobody on the outside would ever guess. The person who looked completely fine when they pulled away. The person who seemed almost relieved to have distance again. The person who made you feel like you were the only one who was hurting. At night, they're quietly coming apart. They ask themselves questions that cut deep. Why do I always do this? Why do I push away the exact people who actually show up for me? Why does closeness feel like a threat when it's the thing I want more than anything? They feel the loneliness of their own making. The specific, suffocating pain of being the architect of your own isolation, and then having to live inside what you built. They think about you in these moments with a clarity that is almost cruel in its timing, too clear to ignore, too late to act on. And they sit with all of it, alone, in the dark, in the silence they created, carrying a weight that nobody knows exists. Because showing this to someone would require exactly what they cannot do. Trust. And the fifth thing, the thing that changes everything you thought you understood about why they left. They feel something they will almost never say out loud. Regret. Not performance. Not manipulation. Real regret. The kind that lives in the body, not just the mind. The kind that shows up as a hollow feeling in the chest when a song plays. The kind that makes them stop mid-sentence in a completely unrelated conversation because something reminded them of you, and the reminder hit harder than they expected. They regret the moment they pulled away when you needed them most. They regret the conversation they shut down. They regret the version of themselves they couldn't be, even when they could see, clearly, that you deserved it. But here is the psychological reality that makes this so painful to witness. Regret, for an avoidant, does not automatically translate into action. Because action requires vulnerability. And vulnerability is the mountain their entire psychology is built around avoiding. So the regret stays inside. It visits them at night. It colors their quiet moments. It makes them hesitant in new relationships. Because somewhere underneath everything, they're still measuring people against you. And you have no idea any of this is happening. Because from where you're standing, they just look gone. So what does all of this mean for you? Here is the truth. The full truth. Not the romantic version, the real one. Understanding what happens inside an avoidant at night does not mean you should wait for them. It does not mean their love, hidden, nocturnal, unexpressed, is enough for you. It means you can stop asking the question that has been eating you alive. Did they ever really feel anything? They did. They do. More than they could ever bring themselves to show you. But feeling something and being able to give someone what they deserve, those are two completely different things. And confusing them is what keeps people stuck for years in the beautiful, devastating, going nowhere space between almost and actually. You deserved someone who reaches out when they miss you, not someone who stares at your name in the dark and says nothing. You deserved presence. Chosen, consistent, courageous presence. And somewhere, on the other side of understanding this, you can finally give yourself permission to stop waiting for someone to love you in daylight, the way they only allow themselves to love you at night. You are not someone who should only be loved in secret. Remember that. If this rewired something in your mind, if you saw someone you love in every single word, share this right now with the person who is lying awake tonight making excuses for someone who keeps going silent. They need this more than they know. Comment below. Tell me, are you in love with an avoidant? Or are you the avoidant reading this at 2 a.m. knowing every word is true? Both are safe here. I read everything. Subscribe to this channel because every week we go into the psychological territory most people are too afraid to enter. And we bring back the truth. No matter how complicated, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how much it changes things. You deserve to understand this. Now you do. Good night.